Hello and welcome to the Happier Marriage Podcast, a podcast for spouses longing to have a happier marriage so they can feel more connected, desired and supported. Now, to start the show, here is your host and Sherpa, licensed marriage and family therapist and certified relationship coach, Kingsley Grant.
Thanks for joining me on the Happier Marriage Secrets podcast, the podcast where we share insights, practical tips, and strategic actions for Christian professional spouses who are looking to strengthen their intimacy and deepen their connection with their partner and ultimately have a God-honoring and happier marriage. This is episode 48, and I have another powerful episode for you. This episode is entitled, How to Express Your Needs and Feelings in Your Marriage Without Starting a Fight. How often people have held back on being their authentic self and sharing what they're experiencing or truly feeling because they have some reservations, or it tends to end in a fight. Is that your story? Well, in this episode, we'll explore the importance of assertive communication and how to implement it in your relationship. Now, let me begin today's episode with the following questions. Number one, have you ever struggled with finding the right words to express how you feel to your partner? Question number two, do you avoid difficult conversations because you're worried about starting an argument? And number three, can you think of a time when speaking up assertively improved a situation in your relationship? Now, I want you to ponder these three questions because as we go through this episode, I'm hopefully going to hit on those at different points and hopefully provide some answers or some helpful ways that you can possibly do this if your answer to any of these questions were ones that you struggle to answer with or answer to. And we have all been there. Here's the good news that I believe that with a little bit of practice, you can begin to learn how to speak up assertively. And here's the good news. It builds stronger and healthier relationship with your partner. So if that's what you want to do, then maybe the reason why you're not experiencing a stronger, healthier marriage is that you're not being assertive in your relationship. And there's reasons why you possibly is not being as assertive as you should be. There's a reason why you're not expressing your needs and feelings in your marriage, because again, you're thinking it could start, it's going to end up in a fight. So when I share this about there's a way to do this, there are people who have objections, and some are very valid why they may be having one of these objections. For example, a person might be thinking that I don't want to come across as aggressive or confrontational because they're worried that if they were to assert themselves, they would possibly come across as aggressive. Now, I hear that you're worried and why you would be worried about the tone or the delivery of your message, right? It's important, though, to remember that speaking up assertively doesn't mean being aggressive or confrontational. Right? It doesn't mean that. It does really simply says you're expressing yourself in a clear, concise, and respectful way. That is what true assertiveness should look like, right? Now, we're going to talk about how you can do that later on, so hang in there with me. Another objection might be why a person may have reservations to wanting to even trust and believe that they could actually be assertive and speak up for their needs and feelings without starting a fight, because they might be thinking, I don't want to hurt my partner's feelings. Now, I understand the concern that you have about the impact your assertive communication might have on your partner's emotions. Now, here's the thing. While it's important to be mindful, right? And I understand that being mindful of your partner's feelings, expressing your needs and feelings in a clear and respectful, concise way can actually improve, on the contrary, improve your relationship in the long run. Why? It promotes open and honest communication and understanding. And the third objection that someone may have, and possibly you, is that your partner always, in your mind, always shuts down or gets defensive, right? Whenever you bring up an issue. So you might be saying, what's the point? Now, I get it that when you bring up an issue that your partner may seemingly show that in their demeanor, right? Non-verbally or verbally communicate that to you. So you may have experienced frustration and discouragement when you've tried to communicate in an assertive manner in the past. But here's what is so important. It's important to address this issue. Because why? You need to find ways to truly communicate what's going on. Because you're holding back. You're hiding, so to speak, and masking yourself in your relationship. And so you're not, in a sense, being intimate as you need to be, or as connected as you need to be, because something is getting in the way. And we're going to talk about how you can truly do this, right? Because I think it's important and necessary that you do, right? So even though you may have one or more of these objections, if you're looking to learn how to speak up assertively and build a stronger, healthier marriage, I want you to stay tuned and hang in there in this episode, because I'm going to share with you 3 ways that you can practice speaking up and regain your voice, because you tend to lose your voice when you don't speak up assertively. Am I correct? I think you're nodding your head and you're possibly saying, yes, you're right. Yeah. And you lose your voice. You lose yourself. So, you're also going to hear me in this episode share the story of Sarah and John. As you know, they are the fictitious couple that we have been following and sharing aspects of their lives as it relates to our topic of discussion. Now, so in their story, we're hoping that you'll be able to relate to the issues, to their stories that they're facing, and how they have either navigated through them or what have made them stuck, right? So let's see then why it's important to express your needs and feelings in your marriage without starting a fight, while at the same time exploring some of these objections. Now, before we get there, I wanted to share with you something about who I am, because you might be wondering, who am I to be talking about these things, right? I just, as I've said before, I have if you've followed me sometime, I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and and a relationship coach. And I've actually worked with hundreds of couples over the years, and experienced with them a number of things. So I'm speaking from a place of professional experience, but also from a place of personal experience, because I've been married for almost 4 decades myself. And so I think that you'll appreciate me bringing both professional and personal experiences to the table in this conversation that I'm having with you. And hopefully that will make a difference. Now, here are some benefits that I believe that you'll have of implementing this topic of expressing your needs and feelings in your marriage. Number one benefits is that you're going to improve your communication and understanding of your partner in your marriage. So when you learn to speak up assertively, right? Remember now, it's not aggressively. It's a difference. When you learn to speak up assertively, you're able to express yourself in a clear and respectful way, which can lead to better communication, right? It also leads to better understanding between both of you. And wouldn't that be something that you would want to have? Well, maybe why you're not having that is possibly because you're not being fully honest and transparent and being assertive in your relationship, not speaking up assertively. The other benefit is that your confidence and self-esteem, when you express your needs and feelings, will be increased, because you're going to feel more confident in yourself, but also in your relationship, that you've created an expectation that you're both going to be honest. And if you've listened to one of my videos that I've done in YouTube, I've talked about this idea how to create safe emotional spaces that you can have this conversation. So when you're able to express yourself assertively, you're going to, as I mentioned, communicate your needs and feelings in a way that feels authentic and true to yourself, right? Which boosts your confidence and self-esteem. And the third benefit that I have that I want to share with you is that when you're able to speak up and express your needs and feelings in your marriage in an assertive manner, it also reduces stress and resentment because you're addressing the issues that are at play right now before they become bigger, right? So when you speak up assertively and address issues in a timely manner, you're going to be able to prevent them from building and getting bigger, right? Building up and causing bigger problems down the line. And this can help reduce stress and resentment in your relationship, right? And so what it does, it creates, I would believe, a more positive and healthy dynamic. So my question now is this: are those benefits something that you would like to have? Well, I want to share with you Sarah and John's story, and then we're going to get into the meat of this episode in a few minutes. So Sarah and John have been married for 7 years, and they have two children. And lately, Sarah has been feeling like John doesn't listen to her or value her opinions. She's been struggling with how to bring up her concerns without starting a fight or hurting John's feelings. Now, John, on the other hand, has been feeling overwhelmed with work. And he hasn't been as attentive to Sarah's needs as he used to be because work is getting in the way. And they both know there's a problem, but they don't know how to address it, especially Sarah, without getting in a defensive experience or dynamic, or one of them may shut down. So either become defensive or shut down. That tend to be the way things is going in Sarah and John's relationship. So I want to ask 3 questions. I'm not going to answer them, but I want you to think about these 3 questions as I just share about Sarah and John's story. Question number 1. What is the issue that is at play with Sarah? What is the issue that's at play with her? Second, what is the issue that is at play with John? What issues are you hearing or recognizing or observing or is at play with John? And question number 3 is, what do we know about their communication style when it comes to issues that could be conflictual? What do we know about the communication style? Now, we're going to answer these questions after discussing the 3 most important ways that you can express your needs and feelings in your marriage without starting a fight. But before I share that with you, I'm asking you to do what I call a spousal honor, meaning doing something to show your appreciation for getting, I believe, such incredible value from each episode, all for free. Now, a spousal honor is taking a few minutes to leave a rating and review on the platform in which you are listening to this podcast. And I prefer you to do it on Apple for a reason, because Apple tend to have a better way of having us found, the podcast we found. So if you have an Apple platform, then I would suggest you do it on Apple Podcast. Now, other platforms also provide you, but I'm going to share with you how to do it very, very easy towards the end of this episode on the Apple platform. And I believe this is the least you can do in return to what the value that I bring to you each and every time, right? I'm going to give you a quick overview, as I mentioned, of how to do so at the end of this episode. Now, to ensure you don't miss any episodes, make sure you subscribe to the show that you're today. Subscribe to the show on the platform that you're listening to this show, so you can always get the downloaded episodes and have them current in your playlist. Okay. Now, if you missed any of the past episodes, I want to strongly encourage you to bookmark this podcast, so you can quickly access the shows. And you can also go to happiermarriagesecrets.com, happiermarriagesecrets.com, and you can see the podcast menu. Just click on that and access all the past episodes that you may have missed, right? Now, if this is the first time you've listened to me, let me say that you may or may not agree with all that I have to say, Maybe by so far you may be agreeing or may not be agreeing. And quite frankly, I don't expect that you're going to agree with everything I say, because one thing I know about you, my audience, you, my listener, is that you are smart. You are able to figure some things out. What I do is try to bring things from a different angle that may trigger some things that you may, some of your norms, some of the status quo. And so I can be a bit contrarian, and so it may trigger you. But that's one of the purpose of this show, is to stir things up. And one thing I guarantee is I'm going to take you in for a safe landing, or solid landing. And you can always share your thoughts through your comments or questions wherever you see this podcast being posted on social media. You can always DM me on any of the social media platforms that I can, ask a question or comment. Or you can also email me, and you can hear at the end how to do that. Now, this show is brought to you by KingsleyGrant.com. And our hope is that you'll be challenged, inspired, and encouraged with the things you find at KingsleyGrant.com. There are a number of resources available, products, tools that helps you to have a happier marriage. And so I want to encourage you to go there and see how you can access those and avail yourself to them, because I think they will help you to have a better relationship. Because my ultimate goal is that all couples, right, especially Christian couples, that you have a happier marriage. Because I believe God wants you to have a happier marriage. And not just because he wants you to be happy, but he wants you to experience what he intends for marriage to be, which ultimately will allow you to experience happiness in your relationship. So if that's what you're after, go to KingsleyGrant.com and see what's available there. So stay tuned as we now continue in this episode.
So the big question is this: how is it possible that you have a happier marriage when you feel like you've tried everything? Your spouse isn't making an effort. You're exhausted. You feel like giving up. Or there's so much hurt that's taken place between you and your spouse. That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen of the Happier Marriage world? I hope you're ready for another round of the Happier Marriage podcast. Today, we're discussing how to express your needs and feelings in your marriage without starting a fight. Just to remind you that you can also watch video episodes of topics like this one on my YouTube channel, KingsleyGrant.com/YouTube, KingsleyGrant.com/YouTube. Make sure when you go there to smash that subscribe button, click on the like button if you like what you're hearing and seeing, and also the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of the video broadcasts, right? I guarantee that you won't want to miss out. So please, can you do that favor for me when you go there, smash the subscribe button. Let me see your name added to there, and let's get this count getting higher. I really appreciate those of you who have already done so. If you have not, make sure you do go there. You can also see shorter versions of some of the points that I've made in my longer episodes, YouTube videos. And you can find it in my YouTube shorts. So you can also go there and just kind of consume them, right? Consume them as much as you possibly can. I mean, just have a day that sit down and just, just watch to your heart's content. Okay? So I count on you to do that. Again, let me simply say thanks for joining me on this episode. As you've already heard, we're talking about the topic, how to express your needs and feelings in your marriage without starting a fight. So how do you implement this? What are some things you can do to ensure that you're being assertive or speaking up assertively in your relationship without starting a fight? Okay. Let's say the first thing I want to suggest to you is this. Practice taking a break and returning to the conversation later. If you're feeling things are getting heated, or you're feeling overwhelmed during a conversation, or you're reading almost reading the room, so to speak. You're testing the temperature of the relationship, and you realize that the temperature is rising. For the relationship's sake, let me encourage you to take a break, right? It doesn't have to all be done at that time. Remember, it's for the relationship. And so you may not need to have that moment where you feel like you have to push through and ram through that conversation. Because when you take a break, it can help you to collect your thoughts and see where you may have been getting sidetracked in that conversation and getting heated and what's triggering all of that. so you can be able to collect your thoughts and approach a conversation with a clearer mind. So when you take a break, you're actually doing it on behalf of the relationship. So again, you don't come across as aggressive, because when things get heated up, the chance is you'll shift from assertive to aggressive, right? Because aggressive tend to be from a state of heatedness or feeling like you have to defend certain things. And so we want to make certain that that doesn't happen, because we see that in Sarah and John's story, for example, that they did a shutdown, is one way that they would, or become defensive. And so that's aggressive behavior will come as a result of that. So I encourage you to, if you're going to speak assertively, practice this habit, work on this muscle. You've got to become wise enough to read the room, read the temperature, gauge that, step back when needed, so you can remain in calm and in control, because that is a prerequisite for assertiveness. You want to keep your emotions in check. And that's really a key thing, but it takes practice, as you can understand, as you can probably see. It's not an easy thing. It's going to take some practice. Number 2, practice mirror, right? To mirror in, mirroring, mirroring. I hope that sounds right. Practice mirroring. What I mean by this is that, when your partner is sharing their perspective about something, and what you want to do is mirror back or repeat back or reflect back to that person what you're hearing in your own words, to show them that you understand and you want to validate their point of view. Now, it gives your partner a chance also to hear what it is you heard, and also then to take responsibility of saying, maybe I did not communicate as I should have, or maybe that, let me correct or change something about what I said, so that the message sent is a message received. Now, what this technique does, it helps to improve your communication, and it also helps to prevent misunderstandings. Because imagine if your partner did not take the time to mirror back to you what they heard, and they could have misunderstood you, run with that and act around that, and possibly create a disastrous situation, because that's not what you meant, and you know how the story goes. So practice mirroring. And number 3, one thing I want to suggest, which is kind of different than what others may be saying in this matter, use humor. Use humor. He said, I'm not a humorous person, and this is not a time for humor. Why? Why couldn't it be a time for some humor, some levity? Why does it have to be always serious? Why couldn't you inject a little humor into a conversation? Because what it does, it diffuses, right? It almost like takes the air out of the balloon. So when you introduce or insert some humor, it can diffuse the tension, right? And make it easier for you to address difficult topics in an assertive manner. Again, I could give an example of this. I'm going to try to make up something out of my head right now that I didn't plan or even thought about. But imagine that my wife and I were sitting down and I wanted to be assertive about something. My assertiveness is really wanted to let her know my strong feelings about something, and say that I wanted to make certain that she heard me about, let's say, for example, when she may use certain words, or phrase, or the way she dismissed me, for example. I'm not saying she does that, but say that was the matter. And I want to be assertive in telling her how I felt about the matter. I can say, honey, I know your hands, when it goes up in the air, for example, I know that, it's just, you're waving it like you just don't care, right? So again, a humor. You're waving it as if you just don't care. And I know that. That's so old school. But anyway, I just want you to know that when I see your hand goes up, it really bothers me, because it feels as if you're dismissing me. I'm thinking you're dismissing me. And so it's really, for me, an issue. So I would prefer that you avoid that. I know you want to wave your hand like you just don't care. So again, I go back to humor. So she would be more likely to hear me, because I use some humor, some smile. It takes the temperature down. And I'm not sure that's the best example, but you get the picture, right? Remember, the key is to implement is to be implementing assertive communication, but you want to have some flexibility. That's why we talk about the idea of stepping back, right? We also mentioned about adaptability. And so you want to reflect back what you're hearing. And so I would suggest experimenting with some of these techniques I've just described. Some of these 3 things I've outlined. You can experiment with that in how to make certain that you make sure assertiveness is what you're after. Now let's go back to Sarah and John's story and see what happens here. Sarah and John, like I mentioned before, have been married for 7 years. Lately, Sarah has been feeling like John doesn't listen to her value or value her opinions. And she's been struggling with how to bring up her concerns without starting a fight or hurting John's feelings. John, on the other hand, has been feeling overwhelmed and with work and hasn't been as attentive to Sarah's needs as he used to be. Right? They both know there's a problem, but they don't know how to address it without getting defensive or shutting down. The question that I posed were these 3 questions. Number 1, what is the issue that is at play with Sarah? Let's start with that. So the issue that's at play, in my opinion, is that Sarah has a belief or a belief about John that he doesn't listen to her or he doesn't value her opinions. Now, my question is that going to make for a good interaction? What do you think is building up in Sarah's heart? Would you say resentment? I would say yes. She's resenting the fact that John doesn't listen to her or value her opinions. So it's a hurdle. So she's going to enter that moment, and why she may not want to be assertive because she had those belief systems at play, right? And so she's also feeling conflicted because she wants to protect the relationship. She doesn't want to start a fight. She doesn't want to hurt John's feelings. And she's feeling like, how do I do this? So we know that's one of the issues that's at play with Sarah. What's the issue number 2 is at play with John? Well, we know John is feeling overwhelmed. And we know that John is making his work more of a priority than it is his relationship with Sarah, because he used to pay more attention to Sarah. Now I know life happens. They have 2 small kids, 2 children. He's working long hours. You know, I know it's very difficult because I've been there where it's hard and you're trying to juggle so many different things, but it doesn't mean that, no longer paying attention to Sarah is the answer, right? So we know that he now believes that Sarah is being unrealistic. Sarah is being too controlling, or Sarah is asking for too much and doesn't give him a chance to even, not conscientious, but is not thoughtful. She may be believing that about John. John may be believing that about her. That it's all about her. She wants it all, So he could also have a resentment that he doesn't empathize or sympathize with his situation, but still placing these demands on him. So you see where they're both at. You see they both possibly have resentment. And I wonder if that is true in your relationship. And that's why I mentioned earlier the need to practice and learn how to be assertive, right? And third question is, what do we know about their communication style when it comes to what they do when they're in conflict? Well, we know that it says that they tend to either become defensive or shut down. Neither of those are healthy, right? It doesn't encourage communication. It doesn't encourage them to have deep, in real time, authentic kind of communication. It causes them to pull back and have a story in their head that is better to not say it at all, but then they're going to show it in their behaviors. So that's what we know about their story. So whatever is going on here, I think it's important for them to be able to sit down and discuss these things that are happening, make them a priority. And by practicing assertive communication, assertive speaking up on what they're feeling and what's going on in their lives, they'll be able to find that when they do, their relationship can become better. They can feel more better connected. But sometimes this is what couples have problems with, is how to communicate when they do not even communicate about smaller things, right? Because their communication might just be involved about work and the kids and the weather and just things that really at the end of the day don't matter as much, right? So because I've seen and heard this so many times, what I decided to do was to come up with an idea, a tool that could solve this problem for many couples, maybe you. And so what I created was what I call the Connect Strong conversational cards for couples. And so what it is a deck of cards that have questions and prompts, allows couples to talk about other topics other than just the kids, work, and the weather. Not that those are not important, but you want to be able to go and talk about other things as well, right? Isn't that so? Now, what these cards do is allow you to have real conversations in fun and meaningful ways that gets you into the habit of talking about things that you may not want to talk about because the topics at hand on the cards will prompt you to do that by creating safe spaces and then have deeper connection and stronger sense of intimacy because you're talking about other matters. So you can have access to your own deck of cards if this is something sounds that it could be helpful. If you go to kingsleygrant.com/cards, kingsleygrant.com/cards, you'll find access to these cards, and I'm currently working on getting on Amazon. But once it gets on Amazon, the full price will be only what you pay. So right now you can save yourself $10 by going to kingsleygrant.com/cards and get your own deck and get the discount code, put that in and save yourself $10 right now. So hurry over to kingsleygrant.com/cards and get yours today. All you need to know about that is on that page. So kingsleygrant.com/cards, and you can get into the habit of practicing communication, both, speaking assertively in a very fun and meaningful way. Now, to summarize our topic of today, how to express your needs and feelings in your marriage without starting a fight, I suggested you do 3 things. Number 1, take a break and return to the conversation later. Number 2, practice mirroring. And number 3, and don't laugh at my pronunciation, okay? Practice mirroring. And number 3, use humor. Now, I'd like to know your thoughts on anything we covered today from the start of this show up until this point. You can send me an email. You can DM me on Instagram, Facebook, and let me know if you have a question. You can also ask a question there or comment or want to know something more. Please engage me in that regard. So thanks for listening. And the announcer will tell you how to get a free gift just for staying to the end. And let's go now and make marriages happier. By the way, I want to tell you how to leave a rating and review real quickly. It won't take you about a minute or two. Go to your Apple Podcast app, right? Pull that up. Search for the podcast Happier Marriage. Okay, got that? Apple Podcasts. Search for Happier Marriage. Navigate to the podcast on the podcast app, right? Just click on the podcast when you find it. And then once you click on the image, scroll all the way down, you'll see ratings and reviews. Tap on the stars, and I hope you tap on 5 stars. Tap on the stars, and then you can write a brief review right below that. Write a brief review right below that, and that's it. That's how it's done. So I just hope you'll do that. I'm looking forward to getting your rating and review, and I truly appreciate that. Now, I can say with that said, my friend, God bless you. Let's make marriages happier again. And here's an announcer.
We've come to the end of another exciting show. And if you enjoyed this podcast, 1, make sure you give this show a rating and review. 2, subscribe to the show to get all new releases. And 3, get your complimentary copy of the 5 Secrets to a Happier Marriage ebook at kingsleygrant.com/HMS ebook. Again, it's kingsleygrant.com/HMS ebook. See the link in the show notes. Do it today. Don't delay. Thanks so much for listening, and make sure you tell one other spouse about this show, or better yet, share it with them. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May he turn his face toward you and give you his peace, both now and forever.